If we can just shift gear a little bit here, perhaps to another subject that you're very passionate about, and I'm in France, and they're passionate about it here too, and that is secularism. We have a religion in France. It's the official religion of the French Republic, and it's called secularism, laïcité in French. You don't like secularism very much, so it's an understatement of the hour. What's wrong with secularism, Daniel?
Where can I start? how much time do we have?
Okay.
Yeah. So secularism is, I mean, from any kind of believing perspective or standpoint, secularism is completely anti-religion. Obviously, the deeper point is that it's human, because remember that if as we claim, human beings are theistic inherently, naturally, you have a system that is taking God completely out of the public sphere and saying that God has no relevance to the way that we ultimately organize our lives and the way that we ultimately run our society. So this should be understood as an anti-human ideology, an ideology that is actually going to destroy humanity. And this is, I think, what we are seeing. I think secularism is destroying humanity. And this is what I argue in the book and in many places. But a lot of, as a sign of the fact that this is happening, take these universal human values that Muslims share with non-Muslims, like the value of marriage. You know, we all value the idea of marriage, love between people. Let's just say love, you know, and forming these kinds of romantic relations between people of the opposite gender. Let's say that this is a universal value. How about the value of family? You know, whether it's nuclear or extended family, there's a human who is going to say that, no, family has no value. I mean, that would be the extreme minority. Most people say, yeah, this is something that human beings value, having healthy, happy families. What about community, communal bonds, and human beings naturally form groups? And that is, you know, in the modern world, because of how much secularism and modernity has destroyed these kinds of relations, nowadays people congregate around these artificial relations, like what sports team do you love? Like, let's rally around Manchester United or Liverpool or what, and they get very aggressive around their team, but they have these kinds of deep bonds with their fellow fans around sports, for example, or I don't know, Star Wars or Harry Potter or whatever. This forms identity. So communal identity is another very important part of the human experience. And then religion, as I mentioned, religion is also very important to human beings. So on all these fronts, secularism is destroying all of these things that we value. The pair bonding and romantic bonding, marriage, and also long-term committed relationships have gone off a cliff.
How I didn't quite catch that. How is secularism directly attacking or undermining family or love, marriage, and so on in the way you're describing? What's the causality there?
So secularism is, again, part of secularism is liberalism. So whenever I write or I discuss secularism, I pair it and I say that we have liberal secularism.
Okay.
And liberal secularism is based on this philosophy that we have to maximize individual liberty and we have to maximize equality. And that cannot be done, according to a secularist, if the law of the land is based on a particular religion. So these things go hand in hand, and they're synonymous in many ways. But when you are prioritizing individual liberty, then this is going to create a lot of problems in these other domains of life. Why? Because if your marriage, for example, requires you to sacrifice your individual preferences, marriage requires you to sometimes say, okay, this is what I would prefer. This would give me the most gratification, instant gratification, but I have to put that aside for the sake of this marriage, this institution. That is a cost that the liberal secular world order is constantly conditioning us to avoid making those kinds of sacrifices. And you see this online. I mean, social media is replete with these men and women who will admit, like, oh, I'm just so tired of my relationship. This guy is holding me back. My wife is holding me back. I'm tired of it. I need to pursue my own dreams. I need to pursue my own life, my own interests. So there's this constant drive to prioritize your own interests and your own dreams and your own career that puts marriage on the back burner. Right. So that's marriage. What about family? Family, look at the kinds of lives that people are living, individualistic lives where why should I care about my parents? Why should I care about my aunts and uncles? They're irrelevant. This is something that is not relevant to me pursuing my life goals. In fact, I'm going to move to the other side of the world for a job, even though it means that I won't see any family member for maybe months or years at a time. That's fine. Like, this is the kind of, there's not even a second thought about that in the modern mind. Like, yeah, of course. And if someone were to say that, actually, no, I prefer to stay in my hometown because I want to be closer to my family, that's seen as something weird. That's seen as something quite unusual. Oh, really? You want? Okay, that's interesting choice that you're making. You're sacrificing your career for family. So these are what's happening now, is that all of these important human bonds and human ties are being dissolved. And there are all kinds of statistics that show how much marriage, family, communal bonds, all of these are suffering to such a huge extent, and religious belief, because of this liberal secular world order that is being imposed everywhere.
Well, this really makes very acute, though, the position of Muslims, and not just Muslims. There are some traditionalist Catholics, perhaps, maybe some traditionalist evangelicals, ultra-Orthodox Jews as well, but particularly Muslims, due to the sheer number of Muslims in the world, of course, is that if Muslims are at odds with the liberal secular order, with the American Republic, with the French Republic, and with Britain as well, because it's more or less the same thing, even though there is a monarchy, then they could be perceived then as out of touch with the social order. So what is the role of Muslims in these countries? And if they reject the prevailing social order, lock, stock and barrel, then they are suggesting the alternative, which is whatever, an Islamically run, or a society that is run in accord with the divine law, understood as Sharia or Halakha or Christian law, whatever that may be. So what I'm trying to say is that the Muslims and these other groups are then perceived as dissidents, as radicals, as revolutionaries, as counter-revolutionaries. It's not just like just a view to have. It has repercussions politically, does it not? In terms of stigma, in terms of labeling, subversive, dangerous, whatever. So, and this is quite a risky, in today's world, that's quite a risky position to take, is it not? In the United States, in France, Germany, Britain, the one could be labeled certain bad words by the authorities, by the state, by the police, by the media. So that this is not just an intellectual game, and I'm not suggesting you are saying it's a game, but it's much more than that. It affects how we're perceived by our peers, by the state itself, is it not?
Well, yeah, of course. I think that the way that you've described it is exactly the way that these liberal state authorities understand it, and this is why they spend so much resources to crush any kind of dissent against the liberal order. And look at how much money and resources they have spent in the UK, in the US and Canada, Australia, to attack Muslims and to demonize Muslims and to and this is just in their countries. Look at the kind of operations that they've been doing in the Muslim world for the past 200 years with colonialism and neocolonialism to stamp out any kind of non-liberal political expression. This is the most brutal type of crackdown is on Muslims, because Muslims are the only ones who have not basically compromised on liberalism and secularism, and we've been insistent that no, because we recognize what is at stake. We're talking about a human life. We're talking about humanity itself. It's not just Muslims. So when we advocate, and when I write, you know, the book Modernist Menace to Islam, it could have been the modernist menace to humanity. You know, it's because it's not just Muslims that are impacted. It's the entire globe. Humanity itself is being impacted.
I just want to say, Danny, if I may, some people may see you as a radical voice, a dangerous voice. And I just wanted to juxtapose that with a video I saw on YouTube. It came up a couple of days ago with someone I happen to know. He's variously known as Dr. Tim Winter at the University of Cambridge, a very mild-mannered professor, a Sufi. He's a convert to Islam. He's also called Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad. As I say, he's a Muslim. I mention him because he is a very moderate figure, but on a recent video, he had a discussion, much like we're having on YouTube, but it's there now. He publicly criticized what's called the Prevent program in the UK. This is labeled as a government or police program that is ostensibly protecting the public, preventing terrorism, extremism. But he was criticizing the chilling effect that this has had on the Muslim community in just speaking out on everyday issues. And this is him saying this. And I know Tim, Abdul Hakim Murad, he is not someone given to speaking out, really isn't, on these kind of things. He is a very mild figure. And for Tim, Abdul Hakim Murad, to speak out publicly like this shows the level of frustration at every level. And he was saying, look, this program, this state program, Muslims feel targeted by it, and they feel they can't speak out on certain issues. Now, he didn't say what the issues were, but I can tell you what they are because I happen to know what they are. They are Muslims can't speak out about Palestine. They can't speak out against Zionism. Why? Because it's anti-Semitism, so-called, allegedly. And they can't speak out on LGBTQ issues very often because they'll be perceived as haters, whatever. So the whole discourse on many controversial issues has been shut down. So it's not just Daniel. I just want to let viewers know it is a wide range of Islamic intellectual content. It is being affected by this liberal authoritarianism, both in Britain, and I know it happens in France and elsewhere, and possibly in America too. So it's a serious problem across the board, I think.
Yeah, and this kind of censorship and these kinds of programs, like you mentioned, Prevent. In the US, is called CVE, Countering Violent Extremism. Okay. These programs are expanding rapidly. Like Muslims were the first targets of these programs. Now it's expanding. Basically, anyone who has a conservative view on any of these issues, whether it's LGBT, whether it's immigration, whether it's any of these kinds of issues, if you have a conservative view, or even women's issues, then you're considered a violent threat, and you will be surveilled. You will possibly be detained. You'll possibly end up on a no-fly list. Your bank accounts can be seized or frozen. All of these kinds of things. It's more than just chilling free speech. People are being thrown in prison. And if you are in the Muslim world, you could be assassinated. You could end up, being disappeared into some cave somewhere or some black site. All of this has been used. And why is this massive surveillance net, or as you called it, liberal authoritarianism, expanding? It's because more and more people are realizing that liberalism doesn't deliver the goods. Liberalism was supposed to be the path. Liberal secularism was supposed to be the path to prosperity, to this kind of utopia of complete equality between people, and we'd all be living happy lives with our families, with our wives and children, and be able. All people want to do is go to work, whatever work it may be, earn money, bring it back to their family, enjoy life, in the comfort of a home that they own, not be under crippling debt, not be constantly worried if they've gotten the latest injection of whatever experimental drug, not be worried about all of these kinds of programs aimed at children, drag queen story hour. And did you see the latest news about a Lutheran church that brought a trans person or drag queen to read A Christmas Story to children?
No.
This is
a Lutheran church. Gosh,
yeah, Lutheran church in America. So this is the kind of world that liberalism has created, that liberal secularism has provided, and people are waking up and realizing that this was all false promises. This is all false promises, and now more and more people are being pushed under the poverty line in the supposedly superior West. Look at the amount of people on the level of homelessness in the major U.S. cities. I don't know how it is in France or the UK.
In Britain, in London, where I'm also based, I've never seen anything like it. On almost every street corner, you see people literally sleeping in the streets, and I feel powerless. I mean, what can one do? It's extraordinary what you're saying. Absolutely true.
Yeah. So then this is leading to massive societal discontent. And that is a volatile situation. And so the liberal state has to crack down, basically, and to maintain its power. And so it's going to get increasingly violent. It's going to get increasingly brutal. And the thing that distinguishes our time from points in history is that now they have the technology to actually put up a very good against a population where 90% of people are dissatisfied and want to overturn the power structure. Now there are technological ways, either we're at that point or just to be about that point where it's going to be impossible to change anything. Unlike in the past. In the past, if there was enough societal discontent and enough people got into the streets, you could overthrow the ruling authority. But we're reaching a point because of technology where there's not going to be any kind of popular uprising that can be successful because of the technocratic state.